We're stepping into Philippians chapter 3 today, and there's a noticeable shift. So far, we've seen some incredibly rich teaching. Chapter 1 showed us gospel partnership, discernment, and joy in suffering. Chapter 2 gave us the mindset of Christ, and 3 real-life examples of what that looks like: Paul, Timothy, and Epaphroditus. Now, in chapter 3, Paul's tone changes. He goes from celebration to caution. Because following Christ requires more than just passion, it requires discernment. Let's read Philippians 3, 1-4 together. In addition, my brothers and sisters, rejoice in the Lord. To write to you again about this is no trouble for me and is a safeguard for you. Watch out for the dogs. Watch out for the evil workers. Watch out for those who mutilate the flesh. For we are the circumcision, the ones who worship by the Spirit of God, boast in Christ Jesus, and do not put confidence in the flesh. Although I have reasons for confidence in the flesh. Paul starts with something that sounds familiar: rejoice in the Lord. But then he says something strange: to write this again is no trouble, and it's a safeguard for you. That's interesting. Rejoicing is a safeguard? Yes, because rejoicing in the Lord protects us from rejoicing in ourselves. It protects us from a false kind of confidence, especially the kind that sneaks in through legalism. Paul doesn't mince words. Watch out for the dogs. Watch out for the evil workers. Watch out for those who mutilate the flesh. That's strong language. Dogs was a derogatory term Jews often used for Gentiles. But here, Paul flips it. He uses it for those pushing a legalistic, works-based gospel. These were likely Judaizers, those teaching that in order to be truly saved, Gentile believers had to be circumcised and follow the Mosaic law. Paul calls them evil workers because their message, though religious, was destructive. He even calls circumcision mutilation when it's disconnected from faith in Christ. Why such strong language? Because this isn't just a theological disagreement. This is a gospel issue. Back in chapter 1, Paul prayed that your love would abound more and more in knowledge and every kind of discernment, so that you may approve what is superior. Here in chapter 3, we see that discernment in action. The Philippians were a growing church, a generous church, but they weren't immune to confusion. There were voices, religious persuasive voices, telling them that Jesus wasn't enough, that real righteousness came through the law, through the flesh, through performance. And Paul says, watch out. This is why discernment is so hard, because false teaching often wears the clothes of devotion. It sounds committed, it looks disciplined, it feels spiritual, but it shifts the focus away from Christ and on to self. We are the circumcision, Paul says, not the ones who cut the body, but the ones whose hearts have been changed by the Spirit. He gives 3 marks of true believers. 1, worship by the Spirit of God. 2, boast in Christ Jesus. 3, put no confidence in the flesh. That's how you know the real thing, not by religious activity, but by humble, Christ-centered living. Here's what I love about this moment in the letter. It ties back perfectly to the lives we've already seen. Paul, who once boasted in the flesh, will soon tell us that he now counts all of that as loss. Timothy, who didn't seek his own interests, but those of Jesus Christ. Epaphroditus, who risked his life not for applause, but for service. All 3 of these men lived with discernment. They had to. They had to navigate a world where not everyone who claimed Christ really lived for Christ. And the same is true today. In the next few verses, Paul is going to give us his own story. He's going to say, I had everything you could ask for: status, zeal, education, moral track record, but none of it could save me. He's going to show us how to count everything as loss for the sake of knowing Christ. But before we get there, we need to sit with this warning: watch out. Because legalism is subtle. It often starts with a good desire: holiness, discipline, reverence. But then it quietly starts building a ladder we were never meant to climb. A ladder that says, you're only valuable if you're impressive, if you do enough, if you clean yourself up. And that is the opposite of grace. So here's what I'd love you to reflect on today. Where are you tempted to place confidence in the flesh? Maybe not in circumcision, but in success or comparison or performance. Do you rejoice in the Lord or in your own track record? Can you discern between those who look spiritual and those who genuinely worship in the Spirit? Who around you models the humility of Timothy, the sacrifice of Epaphroditus, or the discernment of Paul? This is why we keep coming back to the mindset of Christ. Because discernment doesn't begin with suspicion, it begins with humility. Next time, we'll hear Paul's story, his shift from confidence in the flesh to absolute surrender to Christ. It's personal, it's powerful, and it might just reshape how you see your own story too. Until then, rejoice in the Lord, not in what you've done, but in what He's done for you.